What's up, everybody? Andrew Cooper here for another Coop's Fantasy Football Fiasco. It's Friday, baby. And as of late, we've been doing, free agency most days. On Wednesday, we do Dynasty. So today, I wanted to switch it up a little bit. I wanted to bring in a new vibe because it's 2024 and there's so many different formats, so many different ways to play that just focusing on redraft, dynasty, the draft, that's old school, man. I mean, I've already been doing a ton of best ball drafts. I know we've got two going already in the Discord with all the members. We're gonna be doing a ton. Pete Overzet and all those guys, they've probably done 100 already by now. So what I like to do is let's mix it up. And the other beautiful thing is it gives us a good idea of early ADP. We can see what's going on now so that we can monitor the landscape and see how things change and get ready for the regular redrafts. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to pull up a FFPC way too early best ball draft. This one has a $125 buy-in, so people are taking it very seriously, and there's $25,000 in prizes. So this is a big one, probably one of the biggest ones that you can do right now. If you want to get involved, go to myffpc.com, use promo code Coop. They'll give you 25 bucks when you deposit 35 or more. Look at that right there. QR code on the screen. Also in the description, you can get set up now with that. And there's big money on the line. And because we've been so plugged in with free agency and so plugged in with the draft, everything, this is where you can take a huge advantage right now and potentially win yourself a ton of money. So why don't we get to it right now? There's a lot to talk about here. Let's pull up the draft board and we'll take a look at that first, right? And here's the thing. When we do this, it's so tough to see that I actually went in and at least for a good chunk of the rounds that matter, I set it up so that you can actually see what's going on. But here's the overall draft board. As you can see, like a lot of the drafts we've been doing so far, there's a ton of yellow up there. That's wide receivers. The green is running backs, yellow is wide receivers, purple is tight ends, and red is quarterbacks. Some quick things on best ball in general before we get too deep into this draft, and especially for FFPC. FFPC is different from some of the other formats because it's tight end premium. So it's full PPR. All the wide receivers and running backs get 1 point. In this one, tight ends get 1.5 points. That's why you see that purple in the top right there at the swing. The guy going double tap, Sam Laporta, Dalton Kincaid. Pretty wild move. I kind of like it. We'll talk about it. But though that's why those tight ends are going so early there. The other things for best ball that are different than some of the other formats for people just getting used to and just hearing about best ball. I know there's a wide variety of people out there. People listening at home, I'm going to go through all these draft picks and let you know where everybody goes. So don't jump out, just because you can't see the board, or you can go to YouTube and watch the board if you want. But for people that don't know, the way best ball works is there's no waivers, there's no trades. You just draft your full team, and then the algorithm during the season slots the players into your lineup with the best performing guys each week going into your lineup. So if you have 8 wide receivers and your top 3 ones all do nothing, but the guys that you drafted like 5, 6, 7 put up 10, 12, 15 points, they automatically go in your lineup. No setting lineups. You don't have to worry about down weeks or bust weeks. So it's a pretty forgiving format. We're coming out with a best ball draft guide this week for you guys. So Fantasy Alarm members are going to get that for free. It's part of the package. We're also going to have it available for people to purchase individually if you're not a Fantasy Alarm member, but you should be a Fantasy Alarm member. There's no better time to get set up with that right now. The giant QR code right there. Go to fantasyalarm.com/win, 40% off the annual membership right now. So you get that guide. I mean, honestly, the guide itself, if you win a contest like this, easily pays for everything, and you don't have to win big prizes. So go get set up with that. But why not, without further ado, get into this best ball draft, and I'll give you some of the the tips and stuff from the guide. The guide is going to have all the basics on best ball. It's going to have all our promo codes for different places to play. It's going to have the different formats for places to play. FFPC, one of my very favorite with the tight end premium. But if you don't like that, there's other options. It's going to have late round picks. I'm going through and I'm doing each strategy and saying, okay, if you end up in a 0 RB or a waiting on quarterback, here are the late round picks for that. It's going to have sleepers. It's going to have busts. It's going to have tiered rankings and full rankings. And it's almost done already. So that'll be up next week for you guys. I see Jack in the chat saying the best ball guide is huge. Jack already a sharp best ball player. Only fantasy I remember besides myself to win two best ball drafts last year, and he's got the crown emoji badge on Discord to prove it. So get involved with us, get going on some best ball, win yourself some crowns, win yourself some bling in the Discord. We're gonna get these fired up very soon. We're gonna do some FFPC for guys like shout out Jerry in Hawaii and Scott Frankel in Vegas. You guys can play in these ones. I checked to make sure. I know you can't play on some of the other formats, so this one's good for you guys. But why don't we get into this and I'll go through some of the strategy stuff while we do it. Right. Sorry, I'm a little bit sick right now, but we're powering through. It's Friday, which means we do a psycho solo 1 hour show no matter what. So let's get after it. As I mentioned, I put it all together in a format that you can actually see. Too many times I've done, watch shows and it's like this tiny little thing. Sometimes I watch on my phone and I can't see what's going on. So I put this together so you guys can actually see the picks. I use the same color code system they have there. So those listening at home, first round, Christian McCaffrey, CD Lamb, Bijan Robinson, Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase, Brees Hall are the first six there. And to me, no surprises. I have no problem at all with those picks. You might be surprised at the names you didn't hear, Justin Jefferson. But the reality is, at this very moment, we don't know if they're going to trade up and draft a quarterback. We don't know if Sam Darnold's going to be the quarterback. They came out and said we're preparing to start Sam Darnold, which I actually kind of like Sam Darnold. But there's a big difference between actually kind of like and a guy like Kirk Cousins that has averaged 267 passing yards per game since he's been the starter. That's top five among quarterbacks. It's slightly more than Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford, gunslinger, Kirk Cousins, also gunslinger. I mean, this guy, when you compare those two players from 2015 to now, which is when Cousins became the starter, Cousins, 267 pass yards per game, Stafford 266. Cousins 1.85 touchdowns per game. Stafford 1.75. And you might say, "Oh, Justin Jefferson, blah blah." That includes for Kirk Cousins 2 years where 3 years where he was a quarterback for the Commanders and 2 years on the Vikings when he didn't have Justin Jefferson. This guy can chuck it football. So losing him at quarterback, that's why Jefferson is not going top six. I'm not necessarily sure. I think I probably would still take him at 7. So here are the next picks coming up. Justin Jefferson at 7, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, A.J. Brown, Puka Nacua, Sam Laporta. That's your back end first round here. Again, not a lot of surprises in this first round. You might, if you haven't been paying attention and plugged into these, you might say Puka Nacua. What? That's where he goes. That's where he actually goes even earlier at times at 8, 9, 10. For me personally, I actually don't necessarily like taking him there. Jack, I did mention that it's tight end premium. Maybe you came in a little late, but just so everybody knows, when you see the purple up there, those are tight ends. This is a tight end premium format. It's full point PPR, 1.5 for tight ends. So that's why you see Sam Laporta going there. Of these, there's no pick here where I say, oh my God, that's terrible. But I personally am not huge on taking Puka Nacua just because sometimes you have an adjustment period where teams now have tape on these guys, they have film on these guys, and you see a little sophomore slump. Not to mention Cooper Cup was a little banged up this year. I'd rather wait and take Cooper Cup. Also, personally, even though I'm a huge fan, I got a bunch of his rookie cards here. I'm not taking Sam Laporta there, to be honest. I mean, last year he had a great rookie year, 120 targets, but he only had 52 yards a game, which I mean, that's Jerry Judy over his 4-year career so far. He's averaged 53 yards a game. You know what I mean? It's like the touchdowns boosted him a little bit. The real concern that I have, and I talked about this with Pat Fitzmaurice on the Wednesday before last when we did Fitz's Fits, when I talked about potential options for the Lions. I worry that the Lions are going to take a split end in this draft. They let Josh Reynolds leave. And if they add a split end like a Keon Coleman or a Xavier Legette, like you look at it and you say, you know, that player might not be fantasy relevant on their own, but they could spread out the targets just enough that now you have Amon-Ra St. Brown, the rookie wide receiver, Jamison Williams as the field stretcher, two backs that can catch the football, and Sam Laporta. For me, it's too rich to take him as my first round pick, even in tight end premium, and even if I were to rank him at tight end one. Now, here's the second round here. The person at the first round went Sam Laporta, Dalton Kincaid. I think it's bold. It's a $125 buy-in, so you got to do crazy stuff. I think it's bold. I think it's wild. I love both players. I'm just personally not doing that. And the reason I'm not doing it is I think I can generate value at the tight end position later on. But this person, I mean, I guess I don't blame him. Dalton Kincaid, it could pay off big here if they don't draft a wide receiver or yeah, I think they're going to, but if they don't draft a wide receiver or Curtis Samuel falls flat, Kincaid could have big upside. The thing is, you're drafting this guy at his ceiling. Like if the Bills don't draft a wide receiver, this is where Dalton Kincaid will go in drafts probably. I would start taking him early, but it's just not necessary. This isn't dynasty. There's no bonus for youth. There's no bonus for those type of things. So taking Kincaid there is, in my opinion, pretty bold. And I'm probably the biggest Kincaid fan there is. I mean, I have 4 Kincaid rookie cards right here on my desk. So I would take personally over Puka Nacua, Sam Laporta, Dalton Kincaid. I would take Garrett Wilson. And I would consider Jonathan Taylor as well. So here's round 2. Dalton Kincaid, Garrett Wilson, Jonathan Taylor, Kyron Williams, Trey McBride, right? So of that crew, I'm not taking Kincaid. I like Wilson. I like Jonathan Taylor. I'm a little worried they add a pass catching back. So I'm not huge on Kyron Williams there either. For me, the way I look at it is before the draft, I'm not taking Kyron Williams there because I'm worried they had a pass catching back. If they go through the draft and don't take a pass catching back, then I'll absolutely take Kyron Williams there. In fact, I would take Kyron Williams ahead of Puka Nacua and Sam Laporta if that were the case. It's just there's no for me. I look at some of these guys and they're locked in. There's nothing that's going to push AJ Brown or Garrett Wilson out of that number 1 chair at this stage. But with some of these guys, Sam Laporta, Kyron Williams, there are things that could affect their value in the draft. I'm just not going to spend up on risks like that. I'll take risks like that later. So that's where I'm at. Trey McBride for me, I do like that pick, especially in full PPR because once Zach Ertz went down last year, week 7, Trey McBride had the second most targets of any tight end in the league, only behind Evan Engram. And Evan Engram, we saw Christian Kirk go down. Evan Engram had the 4th most targets in the league of any player, the 4th most receptions too, 19 more receptions than any other player. So for Trey McBride to be in the same breath as Evan Engram in that sense, you got to love Trey McBride. And they just let Marquise Brown walk to the Chiefs. They traded Rondale Moore to the Falcons. Trey McBride, even if they draft Marvin Harrison Jr., he's probably easily a top 2 target on the team. So I don't mind that pick, to be honest. I like the Saquon Barkley pick. In full PPR, I'm not taking Derrick Henry where he went here. So the next 6 picks are Derrick Henry, Travis Kelce, Travis Etienne, Devon Achane, Nico Collins, and Drake London. That rounds out the second round for those listening at home. And I'll tell you, Derrick Henry, I like the idea. I think it's as good of a landing spot as you could get for this player. It's just that in a full PPR format, it's not the guy I'm taking. Not with Lamar Jackson as the quarterback. He doesn't dump it down much already. Todd Monken calls some screens, but I mean, you just can't bank on screens getting you up to the level of receptions that a guy like Brees Hall or Jahmyr Gibbs might get, or even some of these next guys like Travis Etienne and Devon Achane. No problem with the Etienne pick. Achane is an upside play. They did just extend Raheem Mostert, so he's not going anywhere. But again, if Mostert goes down and he's been injured multiple times, he's 30 years old. Devon Achane, if Mostert got hurt in tomorrow, like if he tripped over, if he tripped and tore his ACL, or I mean, last year around this time or over the summer, we saw uh, Naheem Hines was on a jet ski and he got hit by somebody and messed up his knee. I mean, things like that happen. Nate Burleson broke his arm trying to save his pizza, stopping short in his car, right? So, like, those things happen. If that were to happen today, where would Devon Achane go? He'd probably go like 4, 5 overall, 6, right? He'd go right where Brees Hall goes. It's just that with Mostert there, it's not as exciting of a pick. This draft was done before good point, Ethan, in the chat. I said he was 31. Ethan points out in the chat, Mostert turns 32 this week. So, I mean, 32-year-old running back, it's scary. It's scary. But, I mean, Mostert's a good player too, especially for this format where, uh, again, big plays and explosive players, you get an advantage with those guys here because you get all the good without the bad. Like, Devon Achane has a bad game, you're not responsible for that. He just goes to your bench and somebody else slots in your lineup, it's automatic. Like you don't have to worry about starting these guys or deciding it, so it's not bad for him. This draft was done a couple days ago. I think it was I got it from Eric Bachman over at FFPC. I was like, send me one of those high stakes best ball drafts. We're going to take a peek at it. And he sent me this one over. It was from a couple days ago. That's why Nico Collins went here. You can't draft Nico Collins there. And I'll tell you this, though, I still like Nico Collins because I think Tank Dell ends up being the odd man out in two wide receiver sets. You're going to have, here's what they're going to do. They're going to take Stephon Diggs and they're going to use him the way teams use Cooper Kupp, CeeDee Lamb, Chris Godwin. What I mean by that is when there's three wide receivers on the field, they're going to put them in the slot to get an advantage. CeeDee Lamb plays a ton of slot snaps. He is, and so does Cooper Kupp, so does Chris Godwin. They're like essentially primarily slot guys, Keenan Allen as well, in three wide receiver sets. Then in two wide receiver sets, they stay on the field. They just move outside the flanker. Opposite them is usually a big split end, which is why Nico Collins is going to stay out there. If you're the Texans and you get down to the goal line and you are deciding who's going to stay out there when you bring in a fullback and they use Andrew Beck on 10 to 20% of the snaps in most games, sometimes more, and especially in the goal line, you do that, or two tight ends, who are you going to take out? Are you going to take out the 6'4" Nico Collins, or are you going to bring out the 5'10", 165-pound Tank Dell, who actually got hurt in goal line last year? It's Tank Dell that's coming out. So Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs stay there. I just wouldn't take Nico there now that Stephon Diggs is in town. Drake London is a player that I love ending this round. And before we move on to the next slide, Drake London has been playing on hard mode, right? He has had terrible quality of targets the last 2 years coming from Desmond Ridder and this crowd. Even then, he led the league in contested catches with 17. That's how he got to 900 yards, is he was fighting and scrapping with poorly thrown balls to make things happen. Led the league in contested catches on tough thrown passes. So him with Kirk Cousins coming in, it's wheels up, man. It's wheels up for Drake London. It's wheels up for Kyle Pitts. So let's move on to the next rounds here. Round 3, we have the first pick, Marvin Harrison Jr., the rookie. I mean, honestly, I don't mind it at all. But let me go through. Sorry, it's Mark Andrews, Marvin Harrison Jr., Josh Allen, Devontae Adams, Josh Jacobs, Chris Olave. That's the next 6 guys off the board. Mark Andrews, love that pick. Honestly, if in a format like this and just in general for this season, I don't see why Mark Andrews isn't in the conversation to be the tight end one, right? Like, what has changed for Mark Andrews from when he was performing at a tight end one caliber level? Lamar Jackson's still there. Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman are there. They didn't add anybody major. In fact, Odell Beckham Jr. is probably not going to be back. So it's pretty much the same situation that we liked. I don't get why Mark Andrews now is the tight end, 5 off the board here? Crazy to me. Mark Andrews should be going a lot earlier than this in a format like this. That's a fantastic pick for the guy that got Mark Andrews there. The guy took Drake London and Mark Andrews. So that's automatic. That team right there is already one of my favorite teams, right? Marvin Harrison Jr., you got to speculate in these. So good for that pick, though. There's so many people out there that say, "Oh, Andrews," that say Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors 1A, 1B, and some people even say Neighbors ahead. Why does Marvin Harrison Jr. go so far ahead of Malik Neighbors? It just doesn't make that much sense to me. If they go bing bang 1-2 to the Cardinals and the Chargers, then I don't see why they wouldn't go bing bang 1-2 in drafts like this. So we'll get to where Malik Neighbors is next for those listening at home but a little spoiler, he's on the screen right now. So we'll get to him soon. Josh Allen goes. This was before the Stephon Diggs trade. I'm not spending up for Josh Allen anymore at that spot. I might even still have him in tight end one, QB 1, 2, 3, but I'm just not going to take him where he has to go there. So again, ADP is going to adjust on these, but we're trying to look at these high stakes $125 buy-in best ball teams in April just don't fire enough for us to have daily updates on that. You know what I mean? Next, so Devontae Adams, I like that pick a lot, man. He's going to get the targets. Gardner Minshew's a capable guy. And I see Jack in the chat mentions Josh Jacobs there. Love it. Josh Jacobs. I mean, why does Barkley go so much higher than Jacobs? Like, Barkley went to a good team, but one that doesn't throw to the running back that much. Not just Jalen Hurts, but Nick Sirianni historically doesn't call a lot of running back screens. He likes wide receiver and tight end screens. Obviously, they'll do a little more with Barkley, but It's not really a place where you just pencil him in for like potentially 60, 70, 80, 90 targets. Josh Jacobs goes to an ascending offense with a good QB and great weapons to move the ball. Josh Jacobs is a steal at that pick, as Jack points out, and that's why Jack wears the crown, baby. Jack's a beast. So Chris Olave, not a like Chris Olave, DJ Moore, those are fine picks there. I just don't love making those picks there. Chris Olave, I mean, he's the best wide receiver. He's the only guy in town. Derek Carr in his career has one QB1 season on his resume total, and he's been around for a while. I just worry that like you're not getting the full extent of the upside, but again, he could be awesome. DJ Moore, Keenan Allen's in town. He's gonna have a rookie QB. I don't know. I don't like it as much as I like some of these next picks. So the next picks are DJ Moore. This is the back half of the third round now. So DJ Moore, Michael Pittman, Brandon Ayuk, Rashad White, Mike Evans, Debo Samuel. Michael Pittman, I like him a lot, man. The guy never comes off the field. Literally, uh, if he didn't get hurt, he probably would have led the league in snap share. Him and Alec Peters actually did lead the league in snaps. Those dudes just stay on the field all the time. Great news for Pittman. Ayuk, whether he's traded or not, he's in a good spot. I mean, he's already in a good spot, and it can only get better if a team trades for him to make him the focal point. So don't rule out a draft day trade for Ayuk, but like I love that spot for him because he's worth that spot and it can only get better. I don't really see a spot where it could get worse for him, right? And I'm with you on Mike Evans as well. So in the chat, Ethan says Mike Evans feels like he should go 5-10 spots earlier. Yeah. Now the thing with Mike Evans in this format is that it's kind of a two-sided coin. One is that he's very consistently gets you 1,000 yards, and again, he had 13 touchdowns last year, which ties his career high. But he's not really a guy that's just going to have like 1,500, 1,600 yards the way like a Devontae Adams or even a DJ Moore did last year or some of these other guys. That's the kind of the conservativeness of Mike Evans. But he's also a guy that fits his format because some weeks against like Marshawn Lattimore he disappears and we don't get those down weeks. And then some weeks he comes out and has 130 yards and 3 touchdowns, and we get all those. So he kind of is a best ball guy. I would take Evans ahead of Olave, ahead of DJ Moore. So to give you that perspective, Debo Samuel is a great best ball player as well. Again, you guys know from me and John and Pemba and all the stuff we do that we don't draft a lot of Debo Samuel in leagues where you set lineups because he's so unpredictable. It's so difficult to sit back and say, hey, I bet Debo Samuel has a rushing touchdown today. But that's where he comes out and gives you that crazy value that adds up at the end of the year and gives him, a floor for his season ending finish, not a weekly floor, right? But the thing is, in any given week, you try to go like, to DraftKings or whatever and try and bet that he's gonna have a rushing touchdown. Good luck with that because he's gonna have them, but nobody knows when. In best ball, it doesn't matter. So you get all that. So I like Debo Samuel a lot better in best ball. He is a best ball guy, right? And we'll separate who is and who isn't. Uh, start of next round, round 4, you've got Malik Neighbors, James Cook, Stephon Diggs, Rashi Rice, DK Metcalf, Jalen Waddle. And in my opinion, there's not really a bad pick in this bunch. Marvin Harrison goes at 26. Malik Neighbors goes at 37. Give me Malik Neighbors because we don't know landing spots. We don't know who goes first. We don't know who's going to do what. Not a problem. Like I'm down to wait. If they go next to each other, if it was 26 and 27, I would take Marvin Harrison Jr. But if it's 26 and 37, give me the discount on Neighbors. So that's where I'm living right now. James Cook, I am a little worried because they have gone out and like just look at what they've kind of shown us what they've wanted to do and what they've tried to do. James Cook is a smaller back. He's a good pass catching back. They've brought in Damian Harris. They've brought in Latavius Murray. They've brought in Leonard Fournette. They are trying to acquire a bruiser. James Cook has benefited from them whiffing on all those guys and them not really panning out. Damian Harris even going to retire, but that doesn't mean they're going to stop doing that. They only have 3 running backs on the depth chart right now. I am concerned that they're going to add a bruising running back in the draft, like a Braylon, uh, like a now I totally blank, but Braylon Allen, that a bruiser back like him could come in and be problematic for James Cook. The other thing that's a little problem from that I think, and people on Reddit are like, no, he's fine, it doesn't matter. But running is the luxury of the winning team. And moving the football requires good pass catchers and it requires first downs. Stephon Diggs by himself last year had 58 first downs and 160 targets. So if James, if nobody steps up and it helps them move the ball there, it could just mean less rushing opportunities, less touchdown opportunities. Not to mention, Josh Allen took 15 touchdowns himself rushing, and James Cook only had two. So for me, James Cook actually, I think I lied a little bit when I said I like all these picks. I wouldn't pick James Cook there, and that's just uh, a personal opinion on what I think happens in the draft. And yes, everyone in the chat, I appreciate you guys. Braylon Allen was the name there. So Stephon Diggs, again, he got traded after this draft, but I don't mind the pick there. He's going. They traded for him for a reason. They're going to make him a focal point. Rashi Rice at 40. This was done uh, after the news. Otherwise, he had been going earlier. I don't think he's going to get suspended for many games. And my quick opinion on that is just look around at some of the gray area stuff or like like misdemeanor type stuff or like non like real like things that the fans don't frown upon. Like obviously domestic violence things are taken very seriously and and a lot of similar things, but in this case it's not something where people look at it and they really condemn street racing, you know what I mean? Not to mention I watched Jack Jones last year for the Patriots walk into Logan Airport in Boston with a loaded gun with extended magazines that are illegal in that state, unlicensed, in a bag that had his name on the bag, and he did not get suspended. So there's there's going to be the best lawyers in the world trying to reduce this sentence and trying to make sure he doesn't seem like he's going to miss a lot of games. And again, 3 games, right? Say Jack and Anthony, you think 3 games is about right? 3 games in best ball, whatever. It's best ball, right? You just put somebody else in there. 3 games in any format, right? If this guy's as good as he was last year, then he's well worth the pick at 40. So I don't mind drafting Rashi Rice. DK Metcalf, I like a lot. Jalen Waddle, I like a lot. So there's a lot of picks in this fourth round that make a lot of sense. The second half of the fourth round, one of my favorite players, perfect for this format. People are sleeping on him. Evan Ingram, right? So next 6 picks are Evan Ingram, Devonta Smith, Cooper Kupp, Tank Dell, Kyle Pitts, Lamar Jackson. Evan Ingram in this format, 1.5 receptions per 1.5 points per reception for tight ends. That's an absolute smash pick. If I already drafted Travis Kelsey, I'm still taking Ingram if he's available there. I mean, this team with Doug Peterson ran more tight end screens than any other team in the league. Those are automatic free receptions, and they are worth extra points in this format. And he had the fourth most receptions of any player in the league. Evan Ingram's a smash. Devonta Smith, fine pick here. Cooper Kupp, I like as well. Like the difference between AJ Brown, AJ Brown and Puka. Like, so I have AJ Brown obviously ahead of Devonta Smith, and I don't mind AJ Brown being picked there. Puka Nakua versus Cooper Kupp to me isn't as much of a slam dunk to the point where Puka Nakua needs to go where AJ Brown goes. I think that Cooper Kupp and Puka Nakua, there should be a smaller gap between those guys. So I love waiting and taking Cooper Kupp here. I have no problem with it at all. And if teams are going to adjust and treat Puka Nakua as the guy that had 180 yards in the playoff game, then it's like if people truly believe that Puka Nakua is better than Cooper Kupp, then he's going to get tougher coverage. This happened with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans following Chris Godwin's 1,400 yard season, where his third year in the league, Chris Godwin went crazy because everyone was covering Mike Evans, and then the next year, people respected Chris Godwin more, and he wasn't getting as free of a run. So all year, everybody's saying Cooper Kupp. We have to worry about Cooper Kupp. How are we stopping Cooper Kupp? Now they're going to say, okay, we have to respect Puka Nakua, maybe even more so than Cooper Kupp. Like if people think that Puka Nakua is better than Cooper Kupp, Puka Nakua is going to start facing the better corners. Or maybe, I don't know, what do we think? That teams are still going to put their top guys on Cooper Kupp and let Puka Nakua run crazy for 150 yards? That's my concern. I'm worried about it, man. I'm worried about it. Tank Dell, Can't pick him here. We already talked about that. So then this again, this is a couple days ago. So don't worry about that Tank Dell pick. Kyle Pitts, I love the pick there. Tight end premium. He had 1,000 yards with the ghost of Matt Ryan at quarterback. His target share has been good, even with the low volume. And this is a guy you have to remember. Like he's the only tight end ever to have a 1,000 yard season at 21 years old. The two guys to have one at 22 are Rob Gronkowski and Mike Ditka, literal god legends. After that, guys like Travis Kelce hit his first 1,000 yard season at 27. Zach Ertz had his only 1,000 yard season at 28. Kyle Pitts has legendary upside, especially in a format like this. I love the Kyle Pitts pick. I love the Evan Ingram pick. And that's why, even though Sam Laporta and Dalton Kincaid are my babies, and I practically invented them, I'm not taking them at the 1-2 swing like they went in this draft. I'll wait and I'll take Evan Ingram, Kyle Pitts. And I'll also take Lamar Jackson there, just a tremendous value for Lamar Jackson. I mean, like the after the Stephon Diggs trade, why do we take Josh Allen that far ahead of Lamar Jackson? I don't know. I don't think it happens. This was before this draft was done before. For those just joining us or popping in, here's what we're doing today. We are looking at an FFPC $125 buy-in, way too early best ball draft where you can win a cool $25,000 worth of prizes. Here's the overall board right here, but I went through and I cleaned it up so you can actually see what the heck is going on. I mean, some of you guys might be looking at watching on desktop or you have laser hawk eyes, but I cleaned it up so you can see what's going on. Go to the YouTube channel if you're listening now, or I'm reading all the picks anyway. But what you need to do is go to myffpc.com, use promo code Coop. They'll give you 25 bucks when you deposit 35 or more. The QR code's on the screen. The link is in the description. Get set up now. They'll give you 25 bucks when you deposit $35 or more. You can get in these drafts now and take advantage of all the information we've been sharing about free agency and the draft and everything in advance and get all these players before it's cool, right? Like the hipster move. I don't care about being first on Twitter. I don't care about being different on Twitter. What I care about is being right. When it comes to best ball drafts, that's where I care about being first. That's where I care about being different. Like, don't worry about tweeting about the guys you like. Go in here and draft the guys you like, Malik Neighbors and whoever else, and get them before the draft comes and they shoot up the board, right? And we talk about sleepers and rookies and things like that. So that's where you take advantage of it. Go to myffpc.com, use promo code Coop. They'll give you 25 bucks when you deposit $35 or more. So that's where we're at, guys. We just went through 4 rounds, right? So, and here's something I want to talk to you guys. I'm going to talk about in the draft guide. We have a best ball draft guide coming out on Fantasy Alarm. It's going to have all my rankings, all my thoughts in it. Members are just going to get it. Like, it's just available to members. If you want to get a membership, go to fantasyalarm.com/win. It's 40% off for the annual right now. Like, you just get that along with every other thing that you get. You get in the Discord, all that stuff. If you want to just buy it, it's going to be sold as a standalone product too, for the people that just might want that. But here's my philosophy on these best ball drafts and every draft in general, right? Is and I'm going to full screen myself here for this one because I think this is important, right? The advice that I'm giving is to be like water in your drafts. Everybody comes out and says things like, well, you have to go zero RB, or there's a lot of good late round QBs this year, or you can wait on sleeper wide receivers, or, really deep tight end year. Every person, says all those different things. The mistake is going into the draft pigeonholing yourself into a specific strategy. If you go into one of these drafts and say, I'm going to go zero RB, and 11 other people in the draft are all going zero RB, you're not going to generate any value that way. What you need to do, study every strategy. Zero RB, late round QB, wait on wide receiver, yin yang tight end, know all the targets, right? Know all the targets so that in the early parts of the draft, we just went through the first 4 rounds. All you care about is collecting value, picking the players that you believe will score the most fantasy points. That's all you have to do. If it's 4 wide receivers, it's 4 wide receivers, right? If you end up with 2 quarterbacks because they're sliding, whatever. If you take 2 tight ends because you think it gives you an advantage, go ahead. Get the value first. Don't worry about bye weeks. Don't worry about strength of schedule. Don't worry about stacking. Don't worry about anything except getting the best guys. And then what you do is from there, you pivot to these strategies. You do what you have to do to complete the build and get the job done, right? Don't ever say it's a mistake to say, I'm going zero RB today. But if you walk away from a draft saying, hey, there was a lot of wide receiver value on the board, but I had to pivot to zero RB to make it happen, that's fine, right? That's the difference between a savvy gamer and a not so savvy gamer is knowing how to squeeze value out of these drafts. And I've seen a lot of the top guys, the guys that preach zero RB and all this and that. Pat Carrain, won a ton of money, $2 million, drafting Austin Eckler in the first round of a draft 2 years ago, even as a zero RB guy, because the value was there. So even those guys will tell you, take the value when it comes to you and then pivot after. So that's the rant on that. There you go. Coop telling you ADPs matter. But here we go. Let's get back into it. Fourth round done. Fifth round. This is where you start having to think about your build, right? In these drafts, because there's no waivers, there's no trades, you're going to need at least two quarterbacks. You're going to need at least two tight ends. You want to live, this is 20 rounds, so there's going to be more and more of everything. But you probably want between 2 and 3 quarterbacks, between 3 and 4 tight ends. And I'm talking about I've checked, 4 for 4 and TJ Hernandez do a lot of work on advance rates in these tournaments. And they have the statistics that back this up. 2 to 3 quarterbacks, 3 to 4 tight ends. Running backs, you want between like 4 and 7. But in the 20 round draft, you might have more than that. And wide receivers between 6 and 9. And again, in a 20 round draft, you might have more than that. But that's what you want to shoot for. You don't want to leave yourself with like 3 running backs or one tight end, obviously, would be a huge problem. But yeah, so that's what you want to do with these drafts. Round 5, for those listening at home, Zay Flowers, CJ Stroud, T. Higgins, Joe Mixon, Brock Bowers, Kenneth Walker. Those are the first 6 picks of round 5. No problem with Flowers there. Higgins. I mean, again, there's a lot of value to be had here. Even Kenneth Walker in a format like this, this format is very friendly to touchdown dependent players because if they score a touchdown, you just get the points, right? Like you don't have to worry about them scoring or not scoring. You get it if they score, you don't if they don't. So I don't mind that pick either. CJ Stroud is a pick I love here. I just took CJ Stroud in the Fantasy Alarm best ball draft, the slow draft we have going on right now with the members. And especially now that they have Stephon Diggs, you might not even be available here. Joe Mixon is a pick that I love here. Love. So I like a lot of these picks. I love the Joe Mixon pick because he went to a team that obviously just, added Stephon Diggs. They're going to be able to move the football. The format works amazingly for him. It's a zone scheme. They have Laramie Tunsil, who is a Pro Bowl caliber left tackle. They have a fullback in Andrew Beck, which is the offense the 49ers and Dolphins run. And those are the 2 top teams in terms of like yards before contact, right? Because they use the fullback, because they have great players. Christian McCaffrey led the league in yards before contact. Devon Achane led the league in yards before contact, before touch. And Devin Singletary had like 600 and something of his 900 yards before contact. So Joe Mixon, you talk about efficiency, you talk about inability to create for himself. In this offense, he might not have to. And they know he's good for the scheme, which is why they traded for him and extended him, paid him more money than Zach Moss got, more money than Devin Singletary got. We've talked about Mixon to death, so that's it on him. Brock Bowers, I like the speculative pick here. He could end up being essentially what Mark Andrews is, which is just a guy that plays 85% of his snaps at wide receiver. He's a better wide receiver than most of the wide receivers in the league, and he blocks better than virtually every wide receiver in the league. That's the beauty of Evan Engram and Mark Andrews. If they can be as good at catching the ball as the slot wide receivers, but are just crushing blockers. And again, people say Evan Engram sucks at blocking. He sucks at blocking as a tight end. As a slot wide receiver, he's one of the best blockers in the league. And that's why Brock Bowers is such a valuable and powerful asset. If he goes to the Chargers at 5, which I don't think he does, or if the Chargers trade back and they take Brock Bowers, I'll have Brock Bowers ranked insanely high. So high, you're going to be uncomfortable with it. But we'll have to see how everything shakes out. Kenneth Walker, I already said I don't mind. Second half of this round, Jalen Hurts, Isaiah Pacheco, Patrick Mahomes, George Kittle, James Conner, Christian Kirk. Now, this is the range I don't mind taking QBs. What I do in a lot of cases is I make a big list of running backs and wide receivers I think could be difference making upside being top 5 running backs. And I don't exclude Joe Mixon from that. He's been a top 10 running back 3 years in a row. Right. So I draft all those guys first in most instances, unless Lamar Jackson or somebody falls to a crazy value. And then when those guys are gone and I feel like the running backs and wide receivers are boring, then I'll say, okay, I'll just take my quarterback here. There are so many good quarterbacks that it's not hard. Patrick Mahomes going 57. He's been a QB1 in fantasy every single year he's been in, right? Essentially. Jalen Hurts, obviously awesome. So, like, you can just wait and take a quarterback once you don't like any of the other options on the board. George Kittle, don't mind that pick here. I worry about Isaiah Pacheco. I worry they're going to take a pass catching back in the draft. They haven't had a good one since Jerick McKinnon, and there's been rumors. I mean, they had people popping in, uh, you know, into camp. I mean, I know they brought Clyde Edwards-Helaire back, but wouldn't be surprised to see them take a pass catching back. George Kittle in this format is the best format for George Kittle. So, well, not the best. The best format for George Kittle, the most tuned format to George Kittle would be a standard best ball league, right? Because he has the speed to break off big chunk plays and score touchdowns, but he doesn't really rack up targets because they have a lot of guys on the team and he has down weeks, right? Like he actually, when everyone was healthy, he only essentially had one game with more than 3 targets. I mean, he had 3 touchdowns on 3 targets against the Cowboys, but you can't really predict if and when that's going to happen. In best ball, you don't have to predict it to happen. That's why he's good in this format. James Conner, I like, man. I don't see what's not to like about James Conner. Like, he's a hard worker. I know he gets hurt every single year, but this is best ball. Again, you don't have to worry about that. He's been hurt every year of his career, but you're going to have 6, 7 running backs on your team, and they're just going to slot in. So just know if you draft James Conner, you need to load up on running backs, right? You can't just bank on James Conner because he's going to get hurt at some point. But when he's healthy, he's been great, and he's the only show in town. Christian Kirk, this is a pick where I don't mind the pick where it's going here, but just know that like he's kind of a boring player. This isn't the best format for him because he doesn't have big spike weeks. We want spike week guys. Christian Kirk is more of like a smooth and steady guy. If you are weak at wide receiver, though, it's good to have those guys that you can count on to give you a floor. You just don't want to have too many of them. You don't want to have, you know, Christian Kirk and Tyler Boyd and like have all these middle of the pack guys because you're not giving yourself upside. And in these big tournaments, which this is a big tournament where you can win $25,000 with a $125 buy-in, you're going to want to have upside, especially in playoffs. Like if Christian Kirk is cracking your lineup come playoff time with 7 catches for 50 something yards, then you're probably not going to win a bunch of them. So just keep that in mind in the tournaments with guys like Christian Kirk. Round 6, first few picks here: Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones, Anthony Richardson, Keenan Allen, George Pickens, Rome Odunze. There's not one bad pick in this bunch here. Aaron Jones, I worry about. Alvin Kamara was an RB1 last year. Let's get that out of the way. He was like RB11. So I think he's going to be just fine again. Anthony Richardson, I love him. Keenan Allen, I don't see why DJ Moore goes a million rounds ahead of Keenan Allen. Neither one of these guys played with Caleb Williams before. One of them is a veteran. One of them has a history of success. So I don't know. George Pickens after the Deontay Johnson trade, I do like. I didn't like him as much before. Rome Odunze, again, he shouldn't be going this far behind Malik Neighbors. And Malik Neighbors shouldn't be going that far behind Marvin Harrison Jr. That's the only thing stopping me from really taking Marvin Harrison Jr. where he goes is that these guys, we don't know the landing spots, could have just as much upside, you know. And Aaron Jones, again, like he could get a ton of targets on that offense. I just worry about the quarterback in the situation. So I don't really go out of my way to draft Aaron Jones. Amari Cooper. So for those at home, next 6 picks: Amari Cooper, Ramondre Stevenson, Marquise Brown, Calvin Ridley, David Montgomery, Terry McLaurin. Amari Cooper, I love. That's of this crew, that's the guy I want most. He's the number 1 target for Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson, say what you will about the off-field business, but if you take all quarterbacks of all time in fantasy football and sort them by fantasy points per game, Deshaun Watson is 3. Patrick Mahomes is 1, and Josh Allen is 2, and Deshaun Watson is 3. So Amari Cooper is in a position, if Deshaun Watson comes out and plays well, to have a monster season and be a really good player. Ramondre Stevenson, again, you got to bank on the Patriots being a decent team, and you have to bank on them not using Antonio Gibson to be a pass catching back as much. You have to hope that they signed him to that contract because they knew that the kickoff rules were coming down the pipe, that they were going to do the XFL kickoff, where Antonio Gibson is going to be a big weapon in that because he's already good on kickoffs. But that might be the best setup for a guy like that. But I don't know. I worry about him. Even as a Patriots fan, I don't know if I'm making that pick. Marquise Brown, I love that pick. He's going to that team on a 1 year, $7 million deal, a prove it deal where he's trying to make a big, just stay healthy and he's going to be padding his stats because he wants to get paid big money next year. It's a prove it deal. So Marquise Brown on the Chiefs, 1 year, 7 million. Give me all the Marquise Brown. Calvin Ridley, again, if you're a Will Levis fan, go for it. But I'm not quite there. David Montgomery, he's going to score a lot of touchdowns. I think that's a great pick. And then Terry McLaurin, again, if you truly believe that a rookie QB can come in and elevate this team, a Drake May or Jaden Daniels or JJ McCarthy or whoever, pick your flavor, then you might be in on Terry McLaurin. He's been good with bad QB, so it's not really a bad pick for him either. We got about 15 or so minutes left, so let me try and get through 10 rounds as quick as possible. I'm not going to hit on every single player here, but I'm just going to point out some picks I like and don't like. Round 7, Jaden Reed, DeAndre Swift, Deontay Johnson, Tony Pollard, Najee Harris, Joe Burrow. Right? So in this group, I don't love, and again, Jaden Reed's a guy I like in Dynasty, but in best ball, don't love the pick here because he's not I think it's going to be Christian Watson and Romeo Dubs playing a ton of snaps. This team has to find snaps for Christian Watson, Romeo Dubs, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Luke Musgrave, and Tucker Kraft. It's too crowded to have one guy just get 150 targets, in my opinion. So don't love that pick there. DeAndre Swift, don't really love that pick either, coming in, working with a rookie QB, especially since they all have mobility. Deontay Johnson, I do like that pick a lot there. He can get a lot of targets. Tony Pollard, I like. Najee Harris, not bad either. I mean, you sort the last 3 years, the leaders in rushing yards, Najee Harris is like 4th on that list. Like, he could be just fine. Jalen Warren is scaring people away from the possibility that Najee Harris with Russell Wilson he's just has a great year. So I don't mind that. Joe Burrow, I'm probably not taking a lot of him because I like Kyler Murray, who goes in this next bunch. So next 6 guys, David Njoku, Kyler Murray, Jake Ferguson, Chris Godwin, Dallas Goddard, Raheem Mostert. I will not likely be drafting any of these tight ends because I want my tight ends to be a top 2 target on the team. Right? Jake Ferguson, I'm worried if the Cowboys don't draft a wide receiver, then the pitchforks will be out. Cowboys need to draft a wide receiver and a running back. If they don't draft a wide receiver, then Jake Ferguson and I will be drafting. But I just expect them to draft a wide receiver. David Njoku, they just traded for Jerry Jeudy. Dallas Goedert's behind A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. Again, it's best ball, but Dallas Goedert's not a red zone target. You think he is, but he has not had more than 5 red zone targets in a season since Carson Wentz. So Dallas Goedert, I just don't love. He needs somebody to get hurt. So yeah, and again, Jeezy in the chat says, "Does anyone know if there's a way to adjust ADP since Rice incident and Diggs trade happened?" For ADP itself, they roll it as these drafts come in over like a couple day period, so it will adjust soon. Um, so keep an eye on that on FFPC. I'm just looking at one particular draft that happened here, but yeah, it's going to be updated soon. I think Rashi Rice is going to fall a little bit, Diggs a little bit too, but it's not going to be as drastic as you might think. So Raheem Mostert, just to wrap that one up, that round up, I like Raheem Mostert. He's a guy that can break off big touchdowns at any given time. And again, it's best ball. You don't have to worry about the down weeks. Round 8, Jordan Love, Gus Edwards, Kirk Cousins, Zach Moss, Christian Watson, Jared Goff, Jonathan Brooks. Jordan Love, big upside pick. I mean, he was like a top 5 QB last year in fantasy. Kirk Cousins, again, another guy that just does a great job distributing the ball. So I like that pick a lot as well. Gus Edwards, boring. If you're going 0 RB, that's the kind of pick you got to make to give yourself a floor. He's he's working with Greg Roman again. He's working with Jim Harbaugh and the ground pound, rough and tumble physical football. So he's going to fit in really well over there. But he's probably going to be the same Gus Edwards that we saw with Greg Roman. So I don't think all of a sudden he's just going to be a guy that is like lighting it up. Zach Moss, though, you never know. Like Zach Moss, he could just be way better than Chase Brown. He looked good on the Colts. Zach Moss, I don't mind that pick there at all. I actually quite like it. Christian Watson's another pick that I like. He's not only a guy that every time he was healthy last year, which is a big caveat, he led the team in snaps. He led the team in target share. He is capable of breaking off monster touchdowns, which is great in best ball. So I don't mind Christian Watson there one bit. Jared Goff, safe quarterback. You got to draft two at least, so he's not too bad there. And then Jonathan Brooks, man, I'll tell you this right now. My narrative on Jonathan Brooks is this: I think he's the best running back in the class. If he didn't tear his ACL, he would have continued to be the number one running back for most people. The ACL surgery that was done by Dan Cooper, no relation, who is the head doctor, team doctor for the Dallas Cowboys. If the Dallas Cowboys draft Jonathan Brooks into a great situation for a running back, as the team that knows the most about his medical history, Jonathan Brooks is my number one rookie RB. Jonathan Brooks is a guy I'm drafting in a lot of leagues, and we're fired up for. If the Cowboys pass on him, the Cowboys pass on him at a spot where they should take him in the second or third round, then we'll be concerned. If another team reaches for him and drafts him before the Cowboys, then we're not worried about it. But that's what we want to look for. Do the Cowboys pass on Jonathan Brooks, who they did the knee surgery on? So something to look for in the draft. Big one. Jack, we did feel the earthquake a little bit. I know, yeah, the earthquake in New York. I didn't even really notice it much, but my wife did. So there you go. Next six picks: Pat Fryermuth, DeAndre Hopkins, Tua Tagovailoa, T.J. Hawkinson, Justin Herbert, Trey Benson. I am not drafting T.J. Hawkinson. Not right now. Probably not ever. Here are the problems. Number one, he was already in a battle to be a top two target on the team because they have Justin Jefferson and because Jordan Addison is an ascending talent. That would have been a problem if Kirk Cousins was the quarterback. Kirk Cousins is not the quarterback. It's going to be Sam Darnold. It's going to be a rookie. It's going to be somebody else. The huge problem with that is that TJ Hawkinson tore his knee up. So everybody else is already catching passes from Sam Darnold, right? Like Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, they're hanging out, catching balls, getting to know each other, eating breakfast together. And if they bring in a rookie QB, it's going to be the same thing. Hawkinson's not going to be able to get back on the field because of how late his injury was until sometime this summer. So he's going to need to build a lot of rapport really quickly with whoever the quarterback is. I don't trust it. I don't like it. So I'm not taking Hawkinson there. Fryermuth, I am taking in this range. I'm taking him ahead of Hawkinson because Fryermuth has always been good. He's never been bad. He's just had a bad quarterback. And Deontay Johnson was getting 9 targets a game over the last 4 years. So give me Fryermuth in that spot. Uh, Absolutely, man. Like he's a top two target now with George Pickens, in my opinion, with a better quarterback. DeAndre Hopkins, don't mind that pick. Tua, we like that pick as well. Trey Benson, again, at a certain point, if you don't like the running backs, just start taking stabs on rookies. Rookies is one of the biggest advantages you can get in these formats. So don't mind the Trey Benson pick there. Let's wrap up the next 2 rounds quick. That'll get us through 10 rounds, and we'll get you guys out of here. How's that sound? Round 9, Chase Brown, Michael Mayer, Zach Charbonnet, Jamison Williams, Trevor Lawrence, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Caleb Williams, Chuba Hubbard, Nick Chubb, Cole Kmet, Xavier Worthy, Curtis Samuel. Picks I don't like, not taking Michael Mayer there. I'm not taking Cole Kmet there, right? I just don't see the upside case for those players. I think there's other guys going later that have a similar upside because they both buried behind wide receivers. There's no way Cole Kmet might not even he might have fewer targets than Gerald Everett. Shane Waldron likes to mix and match tight ends. That's what he did in Seattle. And the first thing he did was bring in a guy he played with in Seattle and Gerald Everett. Not to mention they have DJ Moore and they have Keenan Allen. Not a good spot for Cole Kmet. Michael Mayer, again, also buried. Chase Brown, I don't mind that pick. And same with Zach Charbonnet. These are guys that are going to have a role of their own. And they could also, if there's an injury to Kenneth Walker, have big time upside. Jamison Williams is a field stretcher I like. Jackson Smith and Jigba I like in Dynasty, but I don't really like in best ball. He needs an injury. Like you're basically drafting handcuffs at this stage or handcuff pluses, but I don't know, man. I think he's a good player. Maybe he ascends, but right now I'm not taking him at that spot. Chuba Hubbard, don't mind that pick at all. Could be a starting running back for a revamped team that just spent a lot of money on 2 guards. And Xavier Worthy if you're going to draft him, the speedster, best ball is the way to do it because if he breaks off a couple really long touchdowns, you get those points. If he has a couple of games where he doesn't do anything, you don't have to worry about it. It's best ball. Last round we're going to talk about on the show, round 10, Romeo Dubs, Jaden Daniels, Mike Williams, Cade Odden, Blake Corum, Jalen Wright, Adonai Mitchell, Jerome Ford, Devin Singletary, Cortland Sutton, Kendre Miller, Luke Musgrave. Romeo Dubs, love that pick. I think he's going to be a potential top 2 target with Christian Watson on the team. Jaden Daniels, why not take shots on mobile QBs? Jaden Daniels and Drake May. I love those picks as well. Mike Williams, again, we have to check on his health, but I don't mind that pick. Blake Corum, Jalen Wright, like this is where you got to take shots on these rookie running backs. Although I do like Devin Singletary as the starting running back for the Giants. So I probably would take Singletary before I start taking stabs on rookie running backs. Jerome Ford and Kendre Miller, not that interested because, Kendre Miller didn't really do anything last year and Alvin Kamara is still there. And Jerome Ford, they brought in Donta Foreman, who could steal some goal line work, and Nick Chubb is expected back at some point, so don't love that. Luke Musgrave is a pick I like a lot. You can check my Twitter at Coop Fiasco, where I just broke down why I think it's Luke Musgrave over Tucker Kraft all day long. I think it's a smart pick. Cortland Sutton's going to lead his team in targets most likely. So that's 10 rounds of this draft. I'll post the draft in our Discord in the best ball draft. If you want to see the rest of the picks here, see how the team shook out, definitely go to my FFPC now. Hold on, let me get this down while we talk about this. Boom. There we go. Go over to myffpc.com if you want to take advantage of everything we talked about on today's show, all the strategies, all the sleepers, everything that we're going to have in the best ball guide at Fantasy Alarm that will be available soon. You can go to myffpc.com, use promo code Coop. They'll give you $25 when you deposit $35 or more. This contest here, $125 we talked about, you can win $25,000 in prizes. Ooh, lad. If you're ahead of the game, and we've been talking about free agency, we've been talking about the draft, we are ahead of the game. So you can go in and take advantage of that now. And make sure you're set up as a Fantasy Alarm member. You get the draft guide for best ball and all the draft guides for every sport. As part of that, if you're an all-pro member, go to fantasyalarm.com/win, and it's 40% off for the annual membership right now. You can get set up, and you can just directly ask me questions in the Discord. I'm hanging out there. I'm going through with our guy Mile High Luke. We're working on a draft that he's doing right now, and you can throw questions at me whenever. I'm hanging out. So that's going to be it for the show today. Thank you everybody that popped into the chat. Jeezy, Anthony, Ani Coop, CP, everybody that popped in. Thank you guys for hanging. Jack, Matt Deutsch behind the glass. Really appreciate you, man. And we'll be back next week with some more Dynasty stuff on Wednesday and then maybe some more best ball stuff on Friday. So thank you so much, guys. We're out of here.